We were all numbers. I was number 54. So when I went to that room on Sundays, I would find my number, and there would be my nice Sunday clothes, nice white socks, all of those nice things. Because I remember somebody in the street saying, "Oh, I remember you girls. You always look so pretty Sunday morning walking down to church." Well, they didn't know what else went on in that place.
My name is John Elliott. I came here in 1947, September the 7th, with my older brother and my sister. We were sent here by J.C. Hill for truancy. I stayed, but I ran away a lot. There's a lot of stories I got, but you gotta move around so I can tell them. I got a strap on the ass a lot of times for not going to church. The boys had a woolen pair of pants and didn't have very good underwear, and you had to march down to the church. And by the time you got there, your crotch was just raw with that. Every Sunday night after supper, the skin would call your name out and line up out there to get a strap, and there'd be about 25, 30 guys who never went to church. We would fight amongst ourselves to try to get to the end of the line. We thought he'd be tired by the time he got to us. Never got tired. He could strap all day long. Yeah. But I wouldn't cry for him. That would make him mad. But I could cry, but I wouldn't cry for him.
In 1957, at the age of 7, I arrived here with my whole family. And this is where we would have come in through these central doors. But there was also a doorway right here where families met. So if your parents came to see you at some point, this is where they would meet you. They weren't allowed to go anywhere else to talk to you or whatever. And on that side was Zimmerman's office, so we listened to everything. So I was here from 1957 to 1961. I had 3 younger brothers and sisters that went to foster care on Six Nations, but my sister Roberta and I, we didn't leave here until we went to foster care in 1961. And then we went to north of Toronto to a foster home, non-native. And basically we were in foster care until we were 18. Well, I worked in Toronto after that. I didn't come home. Well, you probably have a whole lot of people that you would know in here. Yeah. Don Hill, Carol Dale. Where's Rob? Oh yeah, Roberta.
But there's a lot of names on there.
Oh, there's a lot that are missing because not everything was recorded. Right. But our whole family's on there. We're in here.
Yeah, my brother and sister's names on there.
My sister Rob, Roberta, and they escorted us up into the dormitory. It was all covered with bunk beds. And told me to sleep there and Rob to sleep over a little ways on the lower because I was 7 and she was 6. And so she left. It was very dark. It was kind of scary. And Rob says, "Can I come and sleep with you?" Because at our house, we all slept together. We're little kids. And I said, "Of course you can." So she crawls in bed with me and we're kind of looking at things and, kind of looking around a bit because it was kind of dark and scary and big. And we're just little. And all of a sudden Miss Bunt comes back in and she says to 3 little girls across the room, "You get down here. I heard you talking." Those three little ones come down off their beds and they line up in front of her and they're crying. And we go, you know, what are they crying for? They haven't done anything. She heard them talking, so what? And then she looks in our direction and she says, and what are you two doing in that same bed? Get out here. So we crawl out of the bed, line up with the other three, and we know whatever's gonna happen to them is gonna happen to us. They strapped us with this great big thick, I call it an industrial belt because it was really hard. We had welts from here, you know, the crook of your arm to the fingertips. The very first time in our lives, because our parents didn't strap us, or didn't even spank us.
When I came here, I had 4 cows to milk. The guy that run the farm boss, his name was Howard Barton. And one Sunday, a bunch of us didn't go to church. And just when I come around the door, the farm boss come in. It was a Sunday, it was supposed to be. And he slapped me beside the head, bust my eardrum. Yeah. They took me to the hospital. That was the second year I was here. We knew one another because he knew my uncle. Said he didn't know it was me. Well, maybe he didn't because I had that calf going pretty fast. But it was something. But I had a sister here. She was here 3 years. But I think I only got to see her, to talk to her twice. Because you could go and see her every month if you was good. But I wasn't good too much, so that's why I wouldn't let me go and see her. But they had a dump way down there, and at noon, Weston Chocolate from Brantford would dump their chocolates up, and there'd be a bunch of us hidden down there. And this one time I got down there and got a whole bunch, and I was supposed to go to school that afternoon, and I got back and it was late and the door was locked, so I had to knock on the door. And Anderson, they called him Squarehead, big German guy, opened the door and he asked me a whole bunch of questions where I'd been, and I wouldn't even answer him. So he said he's going to get his strap. He went back to get his strap, and he come marching back. He never said, hold out your hand or nothing. He just reached back and punched me right in the damn belly. And then he pulled up my shirt and all my chocolates bars was in there for my sister. He pulled them up and they all fell on the floor. And he told me to pick them up, and I told him something, and I run like hell. I ran away again for a couple of days. Like I said, we were sent here by J.C. Helford Truesy. But some of that was our own doing because we had a few traps, me, my brother, and my sister. On our way to school, they sent for skunks or whatever. And if one got off, we'd stay there all day and dig them up. Because a hide at that time, a good black one was good, $3. When I'd clean them, the scent were in their leg. And I would cut it out, put it in a little bag. And the next day at school, about 10 o'clock, when that stove was burning hot, I'd take it out and I'd throw it on there. And the teacher say, all right, you Elliott kids, you can go home.
I remember being pushed into the circle, and there was another little girl in the circle, and they said we had to fight. Well, I didn't want to fight that little girl, and I'm sure she didn't want to fight me. And so, you know, you learn to be violent, you learn to be mean and cross, because if you weren't, they're going to pick on you. When they're trying to send you back home, what are you supposed to turn into an angel all of a sudden? You can see the impacts it had on whole societies. And people look at Native people of what's wrong with them, you know? They don't understand the impacts of residential school. My sister and I, we learned as we got out of here into regular society, other kids didn't treat other kids like that. And so we had to change our ways, you know, to conform to this new society we found ourselves in, where the kids were all nice to us. Holy smokes, there's nice kids out there, you know, and they always included us in games and, you know, baseball, football, invited us to their homes on the weekends and stuff. Those kind of things never ever happened here. And so you see another aspect of society that you found yourself living in all of a sudden. We had to shine our shoes, have a bath, brush our teeth, and then when we got changed, they would send us up here. You better have darn good reason why you needed new clothes. Because if you did, quite often you'd get the strap first, because you weren't supposed to do that. So it was kind of a harsh environment, but it's something that we We got used to, you know, you just do. You're not, your life's not gonna change, you know that. So you just go with the flow, try to make the best of it as kids, and that's what I think people have to remember. But these were little kids. And in 1957 was the first time I saw television. And it was in this room, a little tiny TV, and there in the corner, and they had chairs here. And sometimes kids would just sit on the floor. But once you were clean, you were sent up here to watch Looney Tunes, you know, for about an hour, I think. And then when the older girls got up here, they always switched it to American Bandstand, which I really resented at the time being a kid. But as I got older, I thought, oh yeah, I like that kind of music. First time I saw Elvis. I think that's about the only time we saw this room, and maybe at Christmas time, because one of the officers would help us to make decorations, nice shiny paper and stuff. Because this wasn't a library, like what you see now is a nice beautiful library, but at the time it was just seats and that little colored TV, and there was some tables where we could actually do some arts and crafts. But not very often. I know my friend Barb, she was 5 when she got here. Well, if I was 7, Rob would have been 6, Marie would have been 5, Tony would have been 4. So even though they say they didn't take anybody that was less than 5, that's not true. And didn't you have a little guy you looked after?
I had a little guy about 3 or 4. Last year I was here, he was still shitting in his plant. I had to take him in and wash him and his clothes over the radiator, and the boys had that to the dry the next day. But he only had 2 sets of clothes, and he couldn't speak English. He was a little Cree boy. And I'd come in from working, we could be in the playroom on the boys had that. But it took about 2 months before he quit. But boy, did he ever get to be a big man. Had a session going at Sheeshwood Park. Me and my buddies were all sitting at the head table, and then comes this great big guy. He's got a lady on each arm. And just when he got by the table where we were sitting, somebody at the table said my full name, and he come back and he's putting in, "You're John Elliott, you son of a bitch." He said, and I'm looking at him, I said, "Do I remember you?" I said, "Now I remember you." I said, "You were that little guy that I had to look after that was shitting in his pants." And he walked away. Oh, did I ever feel relieved? I thought he was going to murder him. I ended up staying here 5 years like that. But I ran away Christmas Eve. Well, I ran away every Christmas Eve. But in '52, I ran away Christmas Eve. And I was waiting for him to come after me after Christmas. And this time they didn't come. So in the middle of January, Joe Hill come down and talked to my mother. But I didn't stay at my mom's, I stayed at my grandmother and grandfather. And he told my grandfather that I had to go back to school a little bit. So they sent me to number 4 school. But at least I was home.
That's how you was thinking about it.
Actually, I've done that to somebody other, maybe it was Rob. They go, "What are you doing?" I said, "You had a mosquito on your face." So, you know, see the humor in life. You always have to.
And what does truth and reconciliation mean to you at this
Hell,
point?
I don't even know what that means. I never went to school. I was here working. But it means so many different things, I think. But for order to work, both sides got to get together, that's all I know. They can't be just one side. But I don't know whether I'll see that in my lifetime or not, but it's something to think about.
To me, means there's got to be 2 sides to something. Somebody else has to say what they did wrong, and that hasn't necessarily happened. I know we're coming closer to it, so until that happens, I don't see that there's going to be much reconciliation.
What does Orange Shirt Day mean to you?
It means a lot, especially I get to see some of my friends. Because I've had it a few times here, and I got at least to see some of the guys that I were in school with. Because now, at my age anyway, there ain't too many of the guys left. We're all 85 years old. I see a lot of friends anyway. They just don't wear orange shirt on orange shirt day no more. They wear it all the time though.
Orange Shirt Day brings to me all of the people, all of the kids, their experience out in the public. Like, because most of Canadian society had no idea of what residential school was all about and all of the things, the nasty things that happened within them. And so now when they have this big gathering of orange shirts, and I see lots of people wearing orange shirts, not just Native people, but society, they want to know. They want to be part of that healing process, I think. So that's what it means to me, and I'm glad we do have that Orange Shirt Day, because it helps me to recognize how many people are really interested in and trying to change things for residential school children, now that we're no longer children. So that's what it kind of means to me, and I'm glad that we have that National Day to do that.
If you had a message for our people, what would you like to say?
Well, we got to get along. That's what I'd say. I belong to a couple of different groups, and they helped me a lot because, like I said, I never went to school with them. But I was lucky I got a good job and stayed at it. I learned to get up in the morning. That's one thing I learned here. When they called you in the morning, you got up. Because there was no sleeping in here. In the summertime, I'd have to get up at 4:30 in the morning because we had the cows down behind the Mohawk Chapel. And the cow stable was right out here. Me and my buddy would go after them. We'd either take the horses or we'd walk and bring them back and time to milk. And then after we finished milking, we'd go in for mush.
I think that my message is mostly for younger people, because I think most older people have already established themselves. But when you think about young kids, and there's so many things that can waylay their path in life, that ultimately they're going to have to look after themselves. My message is, if you need to be educated, if you need to find a job, get a job, work at something that you want to do as you get older. Nobody's going to look after you. You're not going to have the things that you need to have in life, that peace of mind, but to know where you're going in this life, and more so to know what's going to happen to you after this life. You've got to look beyond this life to do those nice things, those good things in this life, so that you have a more peaceful transition into the next life. Because as far as I knew, our ancestors would be coming to escort you into that next life. And I really believe that. So do what you can to be a good person in this life. Be good to each other. Be good to everyone. You know, that'll come back. I always say what goes around comes around. So if you're nice, people will be nice to you. And it's something that we really need to get our young children to focus on. Having a really kind heart and a good mind. And I think that would get you through life for sure, in a very positive way.